Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 203. Wow, 203 episodes. I can't believe it. Presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Welcome. With me is today's guest, Abbey Violette, intern at Marshall Communications. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, Abbey.
Hi, thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Yes, it's nice to be here.
Abbey is entering her senior year at Thomas College in Waterville, which happens to be where I received my MBA, and several others at Marshall Communications also received undergrad and grad degrees there. So Thomas College is really part of who we are, which is awesome. Abbey is studying marketing management, and she comes from Caribou, Maine, which is in Aroostook County, which is the northernmost part of our state. And I have to say that people from Aroostook County are known for their work ethic. And Abbey is an example of somebody who came from Caribou with a really strong work ethic. And she's currently an intern at Marshall Communications, learning about the PR industry and showcasing her analytical skills. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, analyzing movies and TV shows, trying new restaurants, and spending time with family and friends. She is also creating the Intern Diaries on the marshallpr.com website, and you can see it there on our website or on our social media, so you should check that out. So Abbey, tell us about your educational path so far and what got you interested in marketing and PR.
So as a kid, I always knew that I wanted to do something along the creative lines or the creative fields. And I grew up watching a lot of TV shows and movies. And I got really interested in like filmmaking and that type of industry as well. But I remember in high school, I had watched a show called Mad Men. And if you haven't watched it before, it's about all of these men who work in marketing in the 1950s.
Smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol.
Yes, there's a lot more to that show. But I just loved watching like the different accounts that they would take on and how they would go about marketing them. And so that's when I really started looking into marketing. And then my senior year of high school, I had the opportunity to actually take business classes. But sadly, I was not able to get into the marketing course just because of how my schedule was set up. So that's kind of how I steered away from marketing a little bit. And I started looking towards accounting, and that's actually what I majored in my first year at Thomas. And it wasn't until I took the like intro to marketing course my freshman year at Thomas where I rediscovered that passion, and I decided I was just gonna completely change my major and just stick with what I always have really wanted to do. And I've always loved writing. English was one of my favorite subjects growing up, and I love to read and all of that. So that's kind of how my path steered me towards marketing. And PR, I hadn't ever really thought about, to be honest, until I was presented with this internship opportunity. And I was honestly open to learning about any other field within marketing, because I feel like a lot of people, they always steer towards like the same kind of fields, like advertising and now digital media. And you hear a lot about like social media content and all of that. So that's how I started in PR.
Well, that's a great story. And you're the first person who's worked for me who was inspired by Mad Men. I think that's awesome. And that is a great TV series.
Mhm.
Although I have to say, that's the way it used to be, I guess, in the advertising industry in New York City. But that's not really representative of how we operate on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Although I have to say that, we have been, we create the Marshall Plan for our clients, and that does give us an opportunity to think outside the box with some of our clients. And we just completed a Marshall Plan today, actually, that had some really creative ideas, including creating a mascot for one of our retail clients, as well as creating a print magazine publication, which is kind of what Yeti and Patagonia and Airbnb are doing now, like kind of like a retro thing, going back to print magazines to help strengthen their brand. So I guess we do have a little bit of Mad Men in our business, because we do have to sometimes think creatively, not just like, because PR no longer is just press releases. Like, some people do think that that's all PR is involved with, is just writing and sending out press releases. But Abbey, as you have found out just in your short time with us, it's so much more, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So how is PR different from what you might have learned in school or thought it was previously?
Well, of course, like you just said, I always thought it was mainly just writing press releases. And in school, we did talk about public relations a little bit, but not so much as to what goes into it. We just kind of talked about how a company would need a public relations team to keep their public appearance all good. So, yeah. But now that I'm actually interning in PR, I realize, especially in today's world, PR, I think, plays a large part compared to other parts of marketing. Because now we are all on social media, and a lot of people are using social media. And social media is now, in a sense, like another media outlet. So we're having to flip to a lot of different social media, like content creating, different strategies for posting and using hashtags and building SEO for websites and all of that. So I didn't realize that social media played such a huge part, or was a part of PR, before I started this internship.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, PR has morphed and changed so much since I got started in it. And actually, it's really exciting for me, because it isn't just the same old thing. I mean, when I started at your age in PR, we were like writing press releases on a typewriter. Like, I'm really dating myself now, but I remember when I worked at WCBB Channel 10 public television in Lewiston, Maine, and they gave me a typewriter that actually had an erase key on it. Like, previous to that, if I made a mistake, I'd have to take a little piece of eraser paper and stick it in there and like backspace and type over it to erase. I mean, it's ridiculous when I think about what I had to do back then compared to what I could do now with a computer. But yeah, so press releases were something that we used to write and then mimeograph and send out in the regular postal mail. So much has changed. And because of social media, brands can now be content creators or like media companies. And I think even individuals can be. And, we work with personal branding, and you've gotten involved with some of our personal branding clients. So you've seen how we're trying to create a personal brand for an individual and then have them create content or become essentially like a media company. So, it's great to have attention from the established media like television, newspaper, magazines. But, this podcast, for example, is how Marshall Communications is essentially a media company and producing our own content. So there's a lot of layers to it. But I think PR serves as the foundation, because that's when you kind of identify what is your brand story and what is your mission and your vision, and sort of the tone of all of your content, and what kind of language you're going to use, either in written or verbal communications. So yeah, Abby, and your intern diaries have been really specific about week to week, the things that you're learning. And, what inspired you to do those intern diaries?
Well, I would say multiple reasons. One, it is nice to, be able to look back and see all that I've learned, because if someone were to just ask me, if I hadn't done those diaries and someone were to ask me, oh, what did you learn? I would just not know what to say, because there's just so much I've learned over the summer that I wouldn't even know where to start. So that's one reason. And another reason is they're fun to do, honestly. And I just love talking about what I'm doing and the experiences I'm gaining and all of that.
Yeah, you even had the experience of doing a business lunch, right? We did a business lunch in Waterville.
Yes. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, we went to Front and Main Restaurant at the Lockwood Hotel, and you, Emma, and I sat there, and we had a delicious lunch, but we also had a really good conversation, and kind of, because at that point we hadn't even met in person, right? Because of COVID.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, that's a new phenomenon too, that you're working remotely from home. And, again, when I was your age, with my first jobs, I was always there in person. So, being remote, you kind of have to be a little bit motivated and you have to take initiative. Like if you have nothing to do, you have to reach out and say, hey, I need some more work and things like that. So I think you've done a great job of that too.
Thank you.
So what is your favorite part of the internship so far?
Honestly, everything. I just love that I'm learning so much, not only about PR, but I'm also learning just other marketing tools in general. Emma has taught me quite a bit. Like graphic design, for an example. I haven't even taken a graphic design course yet at Thomas, and she's taught me quite a bit. And I honestly didn't realize too how needed that skill is in today's world, especially in marketing. But so I love that she's been teaching me like other things outside of just PR, such as graphic design. And I love how I'm learning more about like podcasting and what goes into that, because that's not it is marketing today, but it's not necessarily what I thought was going to be a part of PR, or at least I didn't think a lot of marketing agencies did that until I started working for the PR Maven. And then seeing, of course, now I'm seeing more and more other marketing agencies are doing that. So I thought that's fun, especially since I am interested in like film too. Not that this is like 100% film, it's not, but it is kind of in that direction a little bit.
Well, shout out to Emma Dimmick, who's actually our producer for the podcast. And she actually started as an intern from Thomas College herself at Marshall Communications. And now she's the relationship manager. And of course, from the time Emma started, she has grown and developed, and it's remarkable and admirable to see how somebody can come in from Thomas College and grow and develop literally like on the job every single day, learning something new. So, it just makes me so happy that Emma is sort of mentoring you. And then we have Whitney Raymond, who has her MBA from Thomas, and she's a vice president at Marshall Communications. And I believe she's been with me now for 13 years. I'd have to check that date. But, Whitney started out, she was just a little bit older than you are now, Abby. And now she literally knows like soup to nuts, everything that we do. So, but it kind of almost takes that long. As you have seen, like what we do is so complex on a day-to-day basis. Our procedures, our processes, the way we onboard new clients and the way we develop our Marshall plans, there's a lot to it. And that's why it's really great, that we have now Emma, Whitney, Abby, and of course there are others who went to other colleges and they contribute a lot as well. So has PR opened up a new vision for you for your career, Abby?
Yes, it has. I always have loved writing, and I wasn't sure what type of marketing field I would even want to pursue. And now that I've kind of dipped my toes into what PR is, I honestly love it because I get to do a lot of writing, but not just writing, because that can get boring at times when you're just writing all the time. But I get to do other aspects as well that are creative and different types of marketing too.
Yeah. So speaking of writing, like the first piece that you wrote for the Visit Maine website, tell us a little bit about that.
The first piece I wrote was about aerial adventure parks, which honestly going into it, I had no clue what those were. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge outdoorsy person. Although I am from Maine, and I feel like a lot of people in Maine are very outdoorsy, but I am not really. So I had to do quite a bit of researching. And once I did, I was like, oh, like I've seen those driving by, or like I've seen that place in Bar Harbor and whatever. So it was fun to write that because I was able to be a little more creative and a little, I don't want to say looser with my words, but it wasn't as like business professional as like writing a press release, for an example. So I did much enjoy having that creative freedom to write about like tourism and visiting these cool places and just different places in Maine and learning about these different aerial adventure parks in Maine.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Well, we're going to continue with more from Abby in just a moment. But first, I want to remind you about how you can get free access to my latest book entitled Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand. You just go to prmaven.com/giveaway and you can download a free copy today. And we're going to hear from Mike Duguay at Thomas College right now. And then we'll be back with more from Abbey Violette.
After reading PR Works, I really started to think about how marketing actually works. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but what I realized is what each platform nowadays that we use out there in digital media and social media has its own nuance and also quirks to it. And understanding how they're used is exceedingly important. Because when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. And you can't approach it that way in marketing. And that's where I think Nancy's brilliance really shined in PR Works. I think Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand is really sort of the manifesto of understanding that there's many different levels to marketing. It's on your personal side of your brand, how actually you express yourself through business, but also what people hear you saying and what they see out there in the public eye as well. So I think what's really important there, that's really the blueprint of how you go about using these new social media platforms, but also to express who you are as a human being. Because people want to see you authentically and genuinely working with not only what you do, but also with the customers. And Nancy, on a personal level, I think she just that's who she is. She embodies that approach.
Welcome back to the PR Maven Podcast, and we're talking with Abbey, and we hope that you're tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And you can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook, where you can get some inside information, and I share some posts from my day-to-day life as well. So, Abbey, tell us about Thomas College's internship program and how we got connected in the first place.
Yes, so the Harold Alphon Institute for Business Innovation, they will help fund and assist students if they have a business idea, or in my case, an internship. And they have been known to help even businesses here in Central Maine, whether that is to get better Wi-Fi or any way that they can connect students to the business, or how they can make that business, in a sense, a better place to work for younger people and keep younger people in the area. So I am very grateful that they are helping with this internship. And how Nancy and I got connected was actually through my advisor and one of my favorite marketing professors, Dr. Saucier. I kind of went to him and I told him I was looking for an internship. I had applied to a few, but I was having a hard time, especially at the time I wasn't living in the Central Maine area. So a lot of the opportunities that I was coming across, they needed me to be here. And it was just hard because I live in Northern Maine. So I spoke to him and he was like, I think I know someone who could possibly give you this opportunity. And I said, okay, I'll take anything, because I just wanted to learn at that point. And I was grateful that we connected, and that the type of marketing opportunity was different than all of the other ones I was seeing. Because again, it opened that opportunity for PR, and that I had never thought about before.
Yeah, and of course, now that the school year is starting, we've mutually made the decision that you're going to be continuing your internship and actually, continuing to work and only taking 2 actual courses at Thomas, and then the rest of your curriculum will be with us. And of course, we take that seriously, so we'll hope to continue to expose you to new things and new responsibilities at Marshall Communications.
Yeah.
So what are some of the tasks you have been doing on a daily basis?
I wouldn't say that I do daily tasks like the same ones every day, which is one thing that I love about the internship. I kind of do different tasks every week. Of course, there are certain tasks that I do most frequently, or that I do at least once a week. And those would be like writing a press release, a pitch, doing some graphic design work, researching media outlets and media contacts, completing show notes for the podcast, and also analyzing how people are showing up on social media and in the news.
Yeah, and you're actually handling a client with help from Emma and me, of course, but I think we can say it here, Carrabassett Veterinary Services, which is a veterinarian office up in Kingfield, Maine. And so you're working on a press release for them right now, and then a social media strategy. And it's kind of full circle for me, because you're working with Terry, who was like my right hand back at Sugarloaf when I was in the conference sales department there. So it's really exciting for me to see how, people in business come full circle. And of course, you're kind of witnessing how I do the networking thing, because that's such a big part of who I am and my career. So it's nice that you can be involved and meet Terry We reminisced a little bit about the good old days. We were both pregnant at the same time with our sons, who are turning 27 this September. So it's a long time ago. So, what have you learned about personal branding, Abby, and what do you find interesting about that?
Well, I feel like my generation, we hear that word all the time, personal branding, because of like social media influencers. But I don't think people understand how much actually goes into a personal brand. So I have always, in a sense, knew the gist of what personal branding was, and that it's, obviously a person who is, in a sense, branding themselves as like a company, except they're not a company, it's a person. But now that I have actually worked more closely with personal branding clients and I've learned from this internship, there's quite a bit of groundwork that goes into even building a personal brand. There's a lot of networking that goes into it, and a lot of, in a sense, marketing yourself to look a certain way in the public's eye. And I just didn't realize going into it just how much you have to do to even get started with a personal brand. And then, of course, there's maintaining it. But I previously, before this internship, I hear a lot about different influencers all the time having to maintain their personal brand, and like the things that they have to do when there's like backlash, or if they say just the wrong thing and then they have to make like a public apology. So I've seen like a lot of that online, but now doing this internship, I realize that there's just much more like groundwork that you have to do before you even get to that point.
That's right. And so often there's a personal brand behind an organizational brand or a company brand, but because as humans, we're always curious about like, who are the humans who are behind a company. That's why building a personal brand is important. And we are working together on a client now who is a neurosurgeon, and he's invented an app for back surgery. And so we're simultaneously trying to build his personal brand while also building the brand of this app. So you've been involved with that, and you're going to be doing some pitching, trying to get him onto other podcasts. And that's going to be exciting as well to see how you do, like putting yourself out there pitching, because that's a big part in my mind. Knowing how to pitch the media is a really big part of public relations. Because so many people just sort of send out press releases and then they pray that somebody will pay attention. But the media, like journalists are getting so many hundreds or even thousands of press releases in their inbox every day. And sometimes you have to call on the telephone or send another email or figure out how to connect with them on social media to remind them that the press release that you sent is important. So I'm excited to see you starting to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Yeah. Abby, is there a book, a podcast, or an app that has been helpful to you, and why?
Yes, there is actually a book that I read. I honestly don't remember how long ago, but I am rereading it to refresh myself here. But it's called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and it's very interesting. Everyone has heard of burnout, I feel like at this point. It's talked a lot about, especially at college. I've heard that word so many times, but honestly, it's a real thing, especially in today's world. I feel like we overwhelm ourselves just so much. And there is just so many like fads out there on the whole self-care thing and different ways to de-stress, and that is like a huge part of our culture. And this book really goes into the science and the biology, why we experience stress, how we can avoid burnout. And it takes a different approach than I've ever seen, like just reading different articles online or watching videos of people being like, oh, like go do this every 2 weeks or whatever it is to make yourself feel better. And like the doctor, well, it's two sisters that wrote the book. I believe they're twins, but one of them is a doctor, the other one isn't. The one who isn't a doctor, she talks a lot about how she experienced a lot of anxiety growing up, how she was actually hospitalized because the anxiety just ate away at her body. And then her sister, the one that has the PhD, talks more about the science behind it and like what you need to be doing, what your body wants you to do to satisfy those needs. Because when your body is stressed out, it needs something. It's not just something you deal with.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to read that book. I'm definitely going to check that out. I wonder if it's on Audible so I can multitask and read it while I'm driving.
It does surround women, though, is the only thing. Well, I mean, we're all women here right now. But so they take a lot of different examples of like, oh, this woman is a teacher. These are the things that she's going through. And then they talk about like how they would talk to this person to figure out ways that they can avoid the burnout and better their stress.
That's good. Yeah, because life is stressful, and I know what you mean when you talk about like anxiety, like, oh my God, am I going to be able to get all of this work done? Or am I going to be able to show up for all these different appointments? And so, yeah, that sounds like a good book. So, Abbey, how can people get in touch with you, and how can they follow your intern diaries?
People can get in touch with me by emailing my Marshall PR email. Also my LinkedIn account, where I post, or not post, but I share the intern diaries. But if people do want to see like the first post or the first reminder that the intern diaries are out, they can follow all of the Marshall PR social medias because it's posted everywhere. And they can also check out the marshallpr.com website under the blogs tab.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks, Abbey. This has been a lot of fun. It's nice to have a conversation with you. And I hope that you can connect with Abbey on LinkedIn or by email at aviolette@marshallpr.com. So have a great day, Abbey.
Thank you. You too.
And have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.